appreciate it. Well, let me first say that I am not a concussion professional. I am not a doctor. I cannot diagnose, treat, or dispense official medical advice regarding concussions. I'm simply coming to you, friend to friend, neighbor to neighbor, parent to parent, to tell you about the effective and affordable concussion care that my family found. Well, let me introduce myself. Like I said, my name is Faith Enriquez, and I have 10 children. Here's a picture. This was taken just about 3 years ago at my son Samuel's wedding. So here's me, my husband Sydney, 28 years of marriage together. We've been blessed with 10 beautiful children. And not surprisingly, with this many people in the family, we have some experience with concussions. And let me ask you a question. Have any of you suffered a concussion, or somebody you loved has suffered a concussion? Do you have constant debilitating symptoms still, and you wonder if it will always be like this, if you can ever get better? Well, you're not alone. We've had those thoughts and feelings too. So again, to show some of my kids, let me tell you about some of our concussions. We've got Samuel here, the groom. When he was in high school, he got a concussion during wrestling practice when one of his brothers accidentally slammed him the wrong way against the mat. And he got better, was able to go back to school and back to sports, but his symptoms lasted for months and months. In fact, almost a year later, at the 4th of July, he was not able to watch fireworks with our family. He had to go sit in the car because the lights and the noise were just still too much for him. Then there's my son, Aaron. He is our fearless child. He has had multiple concussions from car accidents, motorcycle accidents, snowboarding accidents, horsing around with friends accidents, you name it, he's done it, and he's suffered quite a few concussions as a result. Well, my kind of most sad story about him with a concussion is several months after he rolled our car down our neighbor's car pasture. It was Christmas morning, and he would not come down for Christmas gifts. The headache and fatigue and irritability and anxiousness had him trapped in his room. Then there's my son, Nathaniel. He also got a concussion at wrestling practice, and he got better. He got some treatment, some therapy. He went back to school, but the whole school year for him was quite difficult, even after he had supposedly recovered from his concussion. As soon as he would walk into the school building, the fluorescent lights would give him a headache and make it hard to focus, and he really had a difficult school year. So all three of these boys, they all took about a year to recover. Thankfully, they did recover fully. If you ask them today, they would say they have no symptoms, but it took a long time. Then it was a time for a girl. Our daughter Maria, she's a volleyball player. One night at a volleyball game, she had her hands back like this to set the ball, and another player on the team had her hands like this with a powerful fist ready to bump that ball. Well, long story short, this fist that was supposed to hit the ball with a huge amount of force ended up instead hitting Maria right in the back of the head. And of course, with a blow like that, not surprisingly, Maria suffered a concussion. Well, she went to the doctor. She rested for a couple weeks. When she wasn't getting better, he sent her to physical therapy. But after 3.5 months, she was getting worse and worse. Not better at all, just worse. At this point, I describe her as being almost barely functional. She was missing school constantly. Her grades were plummeting. She almost always was just in her room, resting in the dark. She could barely do anything. It was getting pretty scary. We began to wonder, will she ever get better? What kind of a life can she live like this? Well, thankfully, our physical therapist said one day, look, whatever I'm doing here, it's obviously not helping. I want you guys to go check out, I know there's a concussion clinic down in Pittsburgh. Would you be willing to travel down there and try that? I said, yes, of course. We'll travel down there. I think it might make a difference. We'll give it a try. Well, that's when we found ourselves in the office of Dr. Michael Collins at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And everything about this appointment was very different from anything I'd ever seen with my boys and other doctors and experts and specialists. Dr. Collins really took his time with Maria. He asked her so many questions, including some unusual ones like a family history of car sickness and all sorts of things I'd never heard or been asked before. And he really listened to her answers. He really understood what she was going through and made that clear to her that what she was experiencing was real and that he understood what it was that was happening with her. And then I'll never forget when he did this, he looked her in the eyes and he said, Maria, do you want your life back? Do you want your life back? Wow. And then he said, oh, well, Maria answered him. She slowly nodded her head and said, yes, I do. And then he said these words. He said, Maria, what I'm about to tell you to do are some of the hardest things you're ever going to have to do in your life. But if you do what I say, you will get better. That to me was an astonishing statement. How could he be so confident? And who was this doctor? I really had no idea who this person was. Our physical therapist had told us to go here. I did not know who he was. So I asked him, probably a little cheekily, I said, I'd love to believe what you say is true, but how can we believe you? Why should we believe you? How can you be so confident? And Dr. Collins could have answered, well, don't you know that I am a world-renowned concussion expert? Don't you know that I co-wrote the impact test? If any of you out there listening are an athlete or have children who are athletes, you're probably familiar with the impact test. It is a computerized neurocognitive test that athletes all over the world, at this point, over 20 million people have taken the impact test as a baseline of their cognitive functions. The test tests things like visual memory and recall speed and things like that to give doctors a baseline of what your normal is. So if you get a concussion, they can compare and make sure that you're getting back to your normal. Well, anyway, Dr. Collins actually co-wrote that test 20 years ago. He could have told me that. He could have told me that he gives lectures all over the world, that he's written a book, that he's regarded as one of the top concussion doctors. He didn't say any of that. He just very humbly answered, my team and I have been researching and treating concussions for more than 20 years. That's all I do. All day, every day is concussions. And our experience and research has led us to a very different approach. So if you go home, Faith, if you go home and you look up rethinkconcussion.com, then you can read about us and about our program and some patient testimonials of other people who have gone through our program and have achieved a full recovery. So that's just what I did. When I got home, I looked up Rethink Concussion, and that's when I realized just how much expertise and experience Dr. Collins has. And I went from being a little unbelieving, shall we say, to being very thankful and really amazed that my teenage daughter from a small town, ordinary small town, was able to access such top level amazing care. So Dr. Collins said that he and his team had come up with a different approach from most people. So what is that different approach? I'm going to explain some of that to you today. So Dr. Collins and his team have discovered that there's not just one type of concussion, there are actually 6 different types of concussion, different directions that a concussion can take. And somebody can have just one of those types, or you might have all 6, or you could just have 2 or 3. But that's the job of the doctor, is to figure out what type or types of concussion you have so that you can get targeted, active treatments to rehab the exact parts and functions of your brain that are not working properly. So the way that Dr. Collins illustrates it in the take-home papers that we got from him was like this. He put a circle in the middle that says concussion, and then all these different circles around showing all the different types. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one. The first type is a vestibular concussion. And I had never heard, maybe I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know much about the vestibular system. So let me tell you just a little bit about that. The vestibular system is a system in your brain that interprets motion. It interprets both your own motion and motion that's going on around you. It's like a gyroscope. And it's very important, even though most people have no idea that it's even there. Let me illustrate for you. If you take your thumb and you put it out in front of you at arm's length, and you shake your head as if you're saying no, but keep your eyes fixed on your thumb. Gaze, stare at your thumb, and then shake your head back and forth like you're saying no. Now, you'll notice that, okay, you can stop. You'll notice that your vision is able to stay on that thumb. Your eyes don't bounce and jump all around. And the reason why you're able to do that is because of your amazing vestibular system. The vestibular system, because of an amazing part of your system called the vestibular ocular reflex. The VOR is the fastest reflex in your body. And what it does is when your head moves, there's a system inside your inner ear that's got semicircular canals set at different angles to each other that are filled with a fluid that kind of sloshes around, some little hairs with crystals sitting on top that bend to let your brain know when you're moving in different directions. And all of this information gets processed through your vestibular system. And when you move your head, it tells your eyes to move in the equal and opposite direction so that you're able to maintain a stable gaze and your eyes don't jump all around. It's amazing, really amazing. Another part of your vestibular system helps you to filter out motions around you and keep your gaze steady on something. So if you try this, if you take your thumb and put it out again, and now take your whole body and swing around at 180 degrees. Back and forth, back and forth. But keep your eyes on your thumb. All right, now if you stop, you should have been able to focus on your thumb, and you should still be feeling just fine. If you had a concussion, you might be having a very hard time with that right now and be very dizzy, foggy, nauseous, have a headache, because a concussion, if the vestibular system gets decompensated or messed up, it can have a hard time filtering out the extra movement when you're turning your head like that, and gives you a really hard time. There's actually 30 or 40 different parts of your vestibular system that can get compromised or messed up during a concussion. And it's really important that you have a doctor who knows to look for that and to identify if there is a vestibular issue, and if so, which of the subtypes that you have. What are the particular areas or motions or things that are giving you symptoms? So the thing with vestibular problems are that they are treatable. You don't go sit in a dark room. That's not going to help you. There are treatments for the vestibular system. The next type of concussion, bring this up again, is an ocular concussion. So of course that has to do with your eyes. Your eyes are designed to work together as a team. So when you are looking back, if you hold your head still, you can look back and forth between two things. You can look up and down. If something is moving in front of you, your eyes can follow it. They work together as a team. If something's coming in toward you, your eyes work together as a team to converge and keep their focus on that target. There's actually 65% of the brain is devoted to eye movements. It's a huge part of what goes on inside of your brain. And it is a system that also, unfortunately, often gets decompensated or broken, messed up during a concussion. But like the vestibular system, ocular issues are treatable. And they're not treated by being sent to a dark room to rest. They're treated with targeted, active treatments and exercises specifically tailored to whatever of the many different types of ocular issues there are. The doctor will figure out which ocular issues do you have and give exact exercises to help with those types of ocular issues. A third type of concussion, one that I had never thought of before. I guess I'd never really thought of any of these types before. A third type is anxiety or mood issues. And an interesting thing with this is that Dr. Collins taught me is that the part of your brain that where the emotional messages travel on is the same neural pathway that the vestibular messages travel. So through the brain, the vestibular and the emotional systems both share the same neural pathways. And Dr. Collins and his team at UPMC have discovered that often when this is messed up, this one gets messed up as well. They'll often go together. Not always, but often. And when a patient is suffering with an anxiety type of concussion, they'll have all sorts of problems with their mood. They might feel overly anxious, have a hard time turning their thoughts off, be worried all the time. They might be very sad and cry a lot more than usual. They might get very irritable and angry uncharacteristically. And all of this is because of the concussion having messed up things inside of their brain. But you know what? Often they find that when they treat the vestibular, that helps this. And anxiety itself and all of these mood disorders, those are treatable conditions. If somebody is suffering from anxiety or depression, we don't send them to a dark room to isolate and rest forever until they feel better. No, we give them treatments. We educate them. We give them counseling and therapy. Perhaps if necessary, we give them medications. We teach them how to change their lifestyles. There's treatments for anxiety. It's not go sit in a dark room and hope your anxiety goes away someday. So again, another treatable type of concussion. A fourth type of concussion is migraine. This is one my daughter was suffering from. My daughter Maria actually was suffering from 3: vestibular, anxiety, and migraine. Migraine is just what it sounds like. Someone with a migraine concussion will have throbbing headaches, extreme light and noise sensitivity. They might be nauseous, all of those sorts of things. And often they find that the wrong treatments early on of being isolated in a dark room with nothing to do for days and weeks on end will actually bring on, unfortunately, a migraine type of concussion. But again, migraines are treatable. They're difficult, but they're treatable. And that's what we need to do for a migraine concussion, is treat it, not just lie down for weeks and weeks and weeks and hope that this issue will go away. Type number 5 is cognitive fatigue. This type of concussion will make patients very tired. They'll have a hard time thinking, especially complicated subjects like math and science. They'll have a hard time with things that go on for a long time, like sitting in front of the computer for hours and hours. They'll get more and more tired. Their symptoms will get worse and worse. But again, this type of concussion is treatable. We don't treat it by sitting in a dark room. We have targeted, active treatments that we seek out for this type of concussion. The last circle here, UPMC will say they don't technically call this a type of concussion anymore because it's not inside of your brain, but they still definitely look for this as issues with your neck and your spine. Because often the force that causes a concussion will also cause injury to your neck or your spine that will give you the same kind of symptoms of concussion, headache and dizziness and fatigue and so on. And again, if you have an injury to your neck or your spine, there are treatments for that, and you need to get that issue treated. Now, some of you might be saying, well, I've tried. Hold on just a second. Hey, Josiah, can you be quiet, please, guys? Thanks, guys. We're keeping it real here. Got the dog and the kids coming home from school. So some of you might be saying, well, okay, I've gotten some of these treatments before. I've gotten some vestibular therapy for my concussion. I got some vision therapy for my concussion. I got maybe some medication for the migraine headaches, but it didn't help. I'm going to want to explain to you that it's really important, and something different that they do in Pittsburgh and at other clinics similar is that they look for and treat all of these issues together. Dr. Collins called this a multidisciplinary approach, where there's not just one person or one person doing the treatments, nor is there just one symptom that's being treated. Dr. Collins has a whole team of people who work together. So he'll do the initial diagnosis of what types of concussion do you have. And then he'll send the patient to all these different specialists, all within his clinic, to get the exact kind of treatments that they need. And it's important that these things happen together at the same time. Because if you have a vestibular issue, but your anxiety is not getting treated, you might get a little bit better, but you're still going to be having some serious issues and symptoms. Or likewise, if you have a migraine profile of concussion, and you have a doctor who's giving you some medicine to manage the pain, but he's not treating the vestibular issues or the ocular issues, you're still not going to get better because it's not all getting treated together. Or if you have a problem with your neck and spine, and the doctor's only giving you some kind of cognitive therapy, but not addressing these root problems, you're not going to get better. So that's a big problem with a lot of care and a lot of patients, is that they get stuck bouncing from one thing to another, trying all these different therapies, where what needs to happen is we need to have one person in charge looking for all of these issues and then making sure that you are getting treated for whatever issues you have. Another objection that somebody might say is, well, I got treatment years ago, but it never helped. I just want to emphasize that a lot of these ideas are relatively new. It was around the year 2015 that the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, Dr. Collins and his team really discovered or put all of their years of research together, and they made a big change in the way they were treating concussions and really invented and adopted this model of the different clinical profiles or types of concussions that they treated. I can tell you that from experience. I had a son in 2012 who got a concussion and was sent to a UPMC clinic. It wasn't Dr. Collins, it was a satellite clinic, but he got good care. He got some vestibular and ocular therapy, and like I said, he got better. He had like issues with lights and noise still for a year, but it was not anything like what Maria got last year at UPMC. It was not this, for sure, back in 2012. This was not what they were doing back then. So if it's been a while since you got treatment for your concussion, it's definitely worth seeking out the newer, better treatments that have recently developed. And this was developed and pioneered in Pittsburgh. It's slowly spreading out around the nation, but definitely, again, if you have received treatment but it didn't look like this, if I were you, I would go looking for treatment like this. It's the newest research. It's different from what you got years ago. And in my experience, it works a lot better. So, he said that Dr. Collins told my daughter, if you do what I say, you will get better. And he told her that what he was going to tell her to do was going to be really hard. So what did he tell her to do? Well, tomorrow I'm going to talk about that. And I'll just tell you that the things he told her to do really surprised me. I mean, some of the things he did floored me, which is part of the reason why I came back with my question of, why should we believe you? Because I was just so surprised at some of the treatments that he recommended or told my daughter that she should do. And I'll also tell you that what he told her to do did work. It was hard, but it did work, and she did get better. So if you are able to, join me again tomorrow. That's going to be Saturday at noon to 12:30. I'll be talking with you tomorrow about what were the treatments that he gave to Maria and how did it work. If you were watching this video, if you would give it a like, or comment, or a share. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. And thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.